Hi, everybody. I am so thrilled to bring you this interview with Tarja. She is a graphic designer and a photographer, and she has some great advice on using imagery on your website and in your brand to make it stand out. We also got to chat about just branding in general, what that is, what that means to you, and how you can apply that to your brand, and just about being a designer. It was really exciting to chat with somebody who does something similar to what I do and see what her experiences have been. And I hope that you enjoyed this interview. I know that it was a really fun one for me, and I think you can learn a lot, especially if you are trying to do your branding yourself or you're interested in working with a brand designer one day. She also has a great project that she's working on to create stock images that you could download and use on your website that wouldn't be what you see on most stock websites, and these wouldn't be everywhere. So if you want to check that out, all the links are going to be under the video, and I hope that you really learn something from this. All right, so how was your day so far?
Good. I already had another meeting this morning. I'm collaborating with another person, so we're working on a project together. So
cool. Yeah, it's Monday, so start of the week. Okay. So basically what I'm going to do is go through a couple of those questions I sent you and have you introduce yourself. Okay. And then we'll talk about the, using branded images on your site and everything. And then we'll close with a few more questions and anything else you wanted to share. Okay. And then I will post this sometime, it'll probably go up in October. Mm-hmm. And I'll just need your bio and your links and stuff so I make sure people can find you. Okay, so if you're ready to get started, I can just have you introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Okay. Tarja. I am both a graphic designer and a photographer. And I work with branding specifically, so branded images, branding for websites, blogs, different products, depending on what the project is.
Okay, so how did you get started running your business?
I got started, well, I think initially it started out with when I went to school. Maybe, somebody said, hey, can you help me with this logo? Or, so you started out doing projects for friends. They might have had some business they started and they needed help. So that kind of started the initial, doing things. And then I recently came back from Finland. I was studying, doing my master's there in graphic design. And so I came back, and then I just kind of now have started to kind of really launch my own business.
Okay. So when you got your master's, did you know that you wanted to sort of go into business for yourself, or were you looking for a sort of an office job?
Well, I don't think I initially planned hey, I'm going to be, solo entrepreneur. I think it more just happened more in the sense that I came back and didn't have a job, and so then I was taking on freelance projects, and it kind of grew from there. It sounds very haphazard, but there was probably more of a an idea about it. And I was thinking initially okay, maybe I'll start slowly once I'm working, and then once my business starts to grow, then then I'll launch out. But just the way that it happened, it kind of just grew from there. So
yeah, I was actually the same way when I moved to Richmond. When my husband got a job here, I was looking for a job thinking I'd be back in an office, and that just never, I couldn't find anything, and so I just sort of fell into doing stuff online and grew it from there. Okay, so what would you say your passion and your purpose for the design work and working with clients is?
It's a little bit of a tricky question. I think personally, passion is just the passion to create. I think we all have that passion in us for say you just love to make jam and that's your thing. Like, I'm the best at making jam. I think that's the same thing with me, is like, I really love just creating. So it may be painting or, photography or, just creating a project. I get really excited about creating a project with somebody. So like, I'm passionate about working with people and collaborating. Actually, kind of unusual. I'm not like, I'm just like introvert extrovert. So I like to be by myself, but I love people as well. So I do enjoy that collaboration. So if I get a problem and I like try to figure it out and solve it, that's definitely a passion of mine. And then also I have a passion for teaching as well. So I think in the future, maybe in some way or form, I might be kind of bringing that into my business as well.
Yeah, I think that's great, because eventually you can only create for so many people at once doing what you do. And so being able to teach other people to sort of do that on their own is a really nice way to reach more people and still have some time to do what you like and spend time for yourself.
I think too, like, it's at noticing like at the starting process, which I'm still kind of in the beginning stages of like growing my business and adapting, and realizing I'm kind of probably in the same spot as a lot of my clients, is that you find that you kind of have to be a little bit of everything in the beginning. You maybe don't have the ability to pay for, somebody to do this X, Y, and Z. So I find that like, okay, I need some kind of resource for my clients that maybe are not at that stage yet where they're like branding or understanding what branding is. Like, for us designers, we can talk about it all day and they're like, what are you talking about? What's the typeface and what's font? And like, and why can't I grab my images from Facebook and print those? Like, those kind of things that we get so like worked up about, but then we don't realize that maybe like those are simple things that maybe people don't really understand the mechanics of. So definitely something that I want to like help my clients with.
Yeah. And then what is your favorite part of what you do, and what's your least favorite?
I think we kind of touched on that before, where I love the challenge of like being presented with the problem and parameters. So it's, for example, I create a logo for some kind of restaurant or something, but it has to be within this demographic, or like these kind of, it has to attract a certain kind of people. And so then trying to come up with ideas, that's a lot. I like that challenge. I also like I'm like a visionary in a sense. So I like to see a project. For me, I think the least favorite part is maybe then actually, like, I'm really creative, but then thinking about like the more detailed things of like, sending emails and those kind of things, which probably, I know there's probably VAs out there that was like, that is my thing, I love that. But like, everybody has their area of like strength and weaknesses. So yeah, I think that's like the challenge, like, or trying to, yeah, I think that's like the detail part, or even working with maybe a client that like, okay, doesn't really understand what I'm trying to say. So that can maybe be like disconnect. And I think that's a learning process too, because then you realize, oh, I have to communicate this to my client clearer. Like, this has to be more clear to them so that they understand what I'm trying to communicate. And finding the right clients, of course, too. I think that's key too. Like, finding that you can't try to get everybody at once. Like, I can't attract everybody, and there is a certain kind of client that I want to attract, and vice versa, which is also a big part of branding, of course. So.
Yeah. I know, when you run your own business, you have to do all of the little details. You have to figure out how you're going to get paid and how the taxes are going to work and when you should send your emails, and in addition to doing what you love to do. So it's not, I think people, when you look at it from the outside, is like, you just get to design things all day, and that's really not what it is.
I think that's exactly, I think you said it really well. Like, it's you're everything. So your hats are like, you have so many different hats, and maybe you have strengths and things that you love more than other things, and you have to do all of them in the beginning, at least, until you start to grow your team. But yes, definitely that's the challenge, I think.
Yeah. And then what is the best thing that you've done for your business as you've been starting out and growing?
okay, I'm gonna be a little like, we're both in Bliss Boost, and I think that was definitely something that I was at a point where, as a solo entrepreneur, you're often at a home office, you're alone most of the time, maybe don't have that interaction with coworkers as you're used to, or you don't, as a designer, you maybe don't have that person to like bounce ideas off of. So I think being in just finding the community of people to work with, collaborate with, ask questions, realize that, okay, there are other people that are freaking out because XYZ is not working, or, and building that network of people that, okay, I don't know how to do this, but maybe this person does, and I can kind of contact them. So that was one of the things. I started collaborating with another copywriter, and we did some things, and now we were collaborating, and that was all through that network. So I think that's a big part of being a solo entrepreneur, is finding and building your community of network, and maybe finding people that you can have gone before you or know other areas, have expertise in other areas.
Yeah, I agree. I loved finding that community, especially because, people talk about Facebook groups and everything, but you only feel like you can ask so much there. And when you're in like a tighter community where you can get to know people more personally, you really trust their opinions. Like if you're putting it out in a Facebook group, that you can get answers from 3,000 different people who don't really, know what you're doing or where you're coming from. And so I think having a really close community that's, they're all sort of in line with where you are and where you're trying to go is nice.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with that. And I think smaller is definitely, I was in the group and we were very small in the first couple of months, and I think it's kind of slowed down in that sense, but we started like saying like what we ate for lunch, and like we're in basically, for those who don't know, it's just Bliss Boost is a week-long intensive, and she goes over like finding your target market and writing copy for your web page, bio, and things like that. But it also, in a sense, has a Slack group where I think that's the biggest thing, is where we can ask questions and we can get feedback and things like that. So there's like a random channel where, just say things like, hey, I ate tacos for lunch or whatever. So I think that's a big thing too. Right?
Yeah, and I'll add a link to that for everybody if people want to check it out. And then what do you think your biggest struggle was starting out in running your own business?
I think for me personally, I don't know if everybody's like this, because I think some people have, I'm just a more overarching like visionary, like I get the big picture, and then the detailed parts is kind of like something that, so for me, I was overwhelmed with, I saw the bigger picture of like, I have to have, especially as a designer and knowing what branding means and having a target audience. And I think I was overwhelmed with like how much I'd have to do. I wanted to be here, and I'm like down here, and like, oh, like how to, just being so overwhelmed with like all the tasks. Like, okay, I have to build a website. I have to do this. I have to do that. I have to do this. And I think that was the biggest thing. And then trying to do that all on my own. So I think that's why having that community was a big help. And also, I think it's so much harder doing anything for yourself. Like you just wanted, oh, like I have this idea and I could go this way, and I could do, like when I'm working with a client, it's so much easier. It's very clear. Like I could see, it's not my personal brand, so I'm not like really emotionally attached to it. And in that sense, and so I can easily say, okay, this is what you need. You're lacking your target audience, or you need this XYZ. So I think that was the biggest challenge for me. It was just like starting. So I think that's like one piece of advice I have, is just start small, take one task at a time, realize like what is your working space like, scheduling the time. There's so many aspects for working for yourself that you don't realize that, like when I worked in office, I got dressed and I got to work, and I had a certain time I had to be at work. I had somebody telling me what to do at what time, and then you get home and you're working at home, and it's a different kind of, it's better in one sense, you don't have to commute, but in the other sense, you have to be your own timekeeper and everything else. And so that's can be a challenge as well. Did you find that you had those problems as well, like the transition between working somewhere and working for yourself? Or?
Yeah, I did, because I did sort of design where I was, but I also did some accounting stuff. I just sort of showed up one day and that's what they wanted me to do. But when I started at a certain time, we had lunch at a certain time, we were done. And then I went home and I didn't think about it. And now running my own business, you know, it's like I start in the morning and I'm thinking about stuff all day. I can sit and have lunch and I'm still coming up with ideas, and I'm trying to relax in the evening and still getting emails. So it's like it never, you have to really put limits on yourself if you want to be able to have some time where you're not working.
I was reading this book called Accidental Creative, and it's one of the key things that I got from the book was there's this formula of basically you can be, you know, productive, you know, like how to be productive. So you can be creating at a high level, but and then there's health, productivity, and like doing good work. And so you can be in high, like, which is very common for especially designers when you're working out. You might be working like 18-hour days, and you can be productive for a certain time and point, but if you're taking away the health part of the equation, you're eventually going to burn out. So you can also be like healthy but not productive. You're not going to create like, so that's another thing. If you're at home and you're not creating a high level of productivity, you're not going to create great work. So I think that's so important. I've noticed that too, as I was working in a place where it was just a high level stress, and you kind of go to formulas of things, and creativity is not so linear as people think it is. I mean, there is a process, but it's not so linear of like X, Y, Z, and this will come out, you know, like I'll get a good idea. I've noticed that health is a really big part of it, like taking a break at lunch, going for a walk, you know, doing something different, and kind of, that's when I got my best ideas. It was like so random, like I'm looking at some flowers and I'm like, oh, I could do totally that color combination, or, you know, reading at something else, and then I come up with that good idea of like, oh, that's the solution of like this problem. And so I think having that balance is even more important as a solo entrepreneur, because you tend to, exactly like you say, you're thinking about it all day long, and you could probably work 18-hour days and and like, so you have to like, okay, this is the time I'm going to be working, this is time for free time, actually talk to people, not just stare at my screen all day.
Yeah, I definitely find that, you know, if I don't take a break and just like let my mind wander and things, my ideas are never as good. You always come up with those great ideas when you're doing something else. You know, if I'm on a walk or I'm cooking dinner, or sometimes even when I'm sleeping, like I'll dream about things and I'll wake up in the morning and go, oh my goodness, this is what I've been waiting for this whole time. And I spent hours working yesterday and came up with nothing. And here it is.
Yeah, it's kind of this weird, like, what they say, like the best ideas come like right when you're in between almost asleep, right? Because you're like relaxed and kind of wandering. And then that's like usually, oh yeah, I think it was Mark Twain or somebody who had like his wallpaper by his bed was like scribbles of like things he had like come up with, ideas he'd come up with, and he was like woken up from a dream or something.
Yeah, I have a notebook by my bed and I'll write stuff down, and I'll wake up in the morning and be like, that doesn't even look like I wrote it, but it was a good idea, so.
Yeah, or traveling or collaborating with somebody else. There's so many times where I come up with when I'm in Finland, the commute is very like, it's a lot of like bus and train and stuff like that. So oftentimes I would be sitting on the bus and scribbling and coming up with ideas when I was like on my way to school, or, you know, so how do you just, as an entrepreneur, how do you put that into your like business plan of like, okay, well, how much time am I allotting? Am I really saying that, okay, I'm planning here for 10 hours, or, you know, like those kind of things. So that can be a challenge as well, like thinking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
you are a photographer and you do branding. So how do those things like work together for you when you're helping clients?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds kind of like, but they're both very visual. And I think especially with online businesses, solo entrepreneurs, you're kind of coming into a new form of business. And I think also that nowadays, even though you're not supposed to, you're kind of judging by a cover, because really you're just judging by a website. I've never met this person. Can I trust this brand? Usually branding is very like first impressions, or at least the first layer of branding is visual. So when you go into an aisle and you look through all the cereal and like you go to what you remember, or it has a certain look, like, hey, it's a brown packaging with like green. That's okay. This must be like the organic, natural, even if it could be the same cornflakes in the box, it's still given a certain impression. So I think the same thing goes for online and branding, is that you have a certain target market, you have a certain product, you have a certain, okay, so I sell flowers. My website should have a certain kind of feel and imagery. I'm a small little boutique, so maybe I have a lot of imagery of greenery and like florals, and so then you would use that into your branding. You're doing blog posts, you're doing Instagram posts, you're doing all this kind of stuff. All those things need imagery, and I think it's very important to have imagery that you can kind of tell, okay, this is XY brand, and gives a certain feeling and attracts a certain client. And especially now with Google is kind of adjusting its way of doing things, is they're saying, okay, we no longer rank stock photography as high. Like it's original content that's giving you like a better ranking. So original photography is very important, I think. I think you could use the stock photography in the beginning when you maybe don't have the ability to, you don't have the money. But once, I think you get to a certain point when you're maybe a year into your business, when you kind of have an idea, you kind of have ironed out your ideas, you kind of have a better idea of what your target market is, maybe adjust some things, then you can start thinking about branding more specifically. Yeah. Do you find that real for you as well?
Yeah, I think it all goes together. So I do my own photography for my website, just because then I can make sure it looks the way that I want it to. And you really do have to communicate the way that everything looks has to be consistent throughout. It has to be the images and the colors, and everything that you do needs to be consistent, and so I think that's really important to be able to sort of work with.
Yeah, like here's my workspace, here's my, this is, if you're talking about certain blog, and I think I've been talking to people too, and they're saying like, oh, I'm looking for stock photography, but there's no females at home business kind of things, or there's no like, I want certain colors because all my stuff is, pink, or all my stuff is orange, and I need a lot of, imagery with orange, and so like that kind of thing. So that's something you can create too, is where you create a package for somebody where they're working with, okay, so here's your branding guide, here's your logo, here's your images that I gave you. Maybe even you could give, like, if you're using Canva or something, and I would give you like, here's some backgrounds that you can use, and here's some designs that you can use, and then you can just kind of adapt those. So like that there's a cohesive brand across your social media as well.
Yeah, and I'm interested to know, like, for clients that come to you and they know they want a website and they want certain colors, like, how do you explain really what branding is and what you do?
Yeah. Well, that's funny that you're asking that, because I'm currently, this collaboration that I'm working with Devin, is we're going to do exactly that, is where we're going to start with a Twitter chat and ask them questions. Like, what do you think branding actually entails? Like, is it just a logo? Or what are your favorite brands and why? Like, why do you love Starbucks so much? Like, what about having, a $3 coffee is so much better than, what you can get at home or something like that? So what about Starbucks and that experience makes you have such strong feelings about that brand? So I think branding, you kind of have to first, I usually talk to my client, maybe have some questions like, where are you at? What's your brand, like, what is your business about? Have a list of questions, kind of get an idea of what they know and what they don't know, and then kind of explain the process from there. Like, what is your voice? I mean, like, what do you sound like? Are you kind of like friendly, kind of friend to friend, peer to peer? Are you more, maybe more, like formal, like business kind of thing like that? So are you talking to a younger audience? Are you talking to females? Are you talking to males? Like those kind of things. So getting an idea of what your business, who you are, and then work from there. Some people know exactly what branding is. Some people have no idea, like what the process is. I think that the challenge comes with people who say, oh, I just need a logo. But I think they don't really understand. We as designers maybe get like a little bit like, oh, like $50 for a logo, or you can go to Fiverr. I can go to Fiverr and get one. And I'm like, yeah, you could. But usually they have a set logos, and a lot of times it's even ripped off of somebody else's logo. They copied something. So maybe you don't have an understanding of what goes into it. So then you kind of have to try to explain that, like, hey, there is more to it. Like, it's very specific to who you are. And I think it's a recognition thing, and you want something that can grow with your business and something that's timeless. You don't want something that looks really bad, like, 2 or 3 years down the road, or something that looks professional. And so it takes longer than 5 minutes. I get to know your brand, I get to know you, and then I develop something like, okay, this is the color scheme, and this is the feeling, and then I give you several variations, and we work together. So that takes way longer than 5, and you say, well, you wouldn't work for $3 an hour or $1 an hour, however much it is, because if it only costs X, Y, Z, So if you target, and so that also comes to me like, okay, maybe I'm not targeting that person that wants the $5 logo, but I want somebody who really wants something that has quality, right?
Yeah, and I think for me, I love when clients already know who they're targeting, because that helps you so much figure out sort of what direction to go in and what to do. Because if you don't know who you're targeting, if you don't know what you're trying to say or who you're reaching, you really can't figure out what your brand should look like anyway.
Yeah, I kind of had that, and you kind of sometimes to develop and adjust a little bit along the way. Like, I recently had a little bit of I'm actually reading this book by Sarah Petty. I don't know if you heard of her. She's Worth Every Penny is this book, and she talks specifically. She was a graphic designer, and she started her own photography business, but she has like this marketing and does a lot of talks. But I got her book anyways. So she talks specifically about how boutique businesses, which we are, boutique businesses, it's a business model. She says like it's a smaller boutique. So, you think of boutique, it's like a little cute storefront, very, maybe sells very high-end certain products, like bags and things like that. So you're similar even if you're online, and you cannot compete with, say, the big store brands of like Walmart or something like that, because the way they make their money is they make a large quantity of stuff at a lower price. So there's no way you can compete on price. She's saying you are competing with the special, like one-on-one, like very, specific, geared towards a certain target market, right? So if you don't know who you're talking to, that's a big problem, right? And so I think that's definitely something that you kind of have to, and I realized for myself, like, oh, in my photography, I know what kind of client I kind of want to go towards. Like, okay, I'm looking for somebody who's creative, who wants this, and so then my imagery has to kind of reflect that. So I think so the same thing there. Well, okay, you start out, maybe you're doing, like my business is, I'm a virtual assistant, right? So realizing you're like, what kind of people do you want to work with? I'm going to work with, creatives, or I'm working with XYZ, and then you kind of adjust from there. But yeah, that is definitely another thing I found that is a challenge is copy. Like if they don't have their copy written, or getting their copy written, which is, I was there too, hence I went to Bliss Studios. Like, finding somebody who can write your copy, because I am not writing your copy. I can tell you who, I can give you some copywriters, but I'm not writing your copy, so you have to have that as well.
Yeah, in some ways, it's like the design almost needs to be one of the last pieces. You need to know who you're working for, you need to know what you're doing, and then you need to sort of get feedback from those people so you make sure it's going to work before you invest in a whole website and, you know, a custom logo, because if you're not, you know, knowing where you're going with everything else, you're not going to get much use out of what you get designed.
I think there's two sides to that too. Like, I think as entrepreneurs, you're always kind of adjusting. And I think it does help to have some look what professional, and there is some things that you can sort of start out with the storefront. Like we did in our marketing entrepreneur class, they say a lot of times they don't even have the product yet, right? It's just they have to show some kind of visual. So there's maybe just a landing page, and you know, like so how do I, you know, that initial thing. But yes, I definitely agree that you have to have some idea of like where the visual part, I think, is definitely on the end side. But I think as designers in strategy and thinking, if we're doing a project, we are definitely over here on the spectrum of planning process. Like, I think that's a challenge too, is when you get clients who think it's just the surface, where they're thinking, well, design and logo is just maybe pretty and colors and just make it pretty, and you're like, but if your product is not working, if your service is not working, it doesn't matter how much color and paint you put on it, it's not going to work. So I think that's another challenge. Maybe somebody comes and realizes that their service or their product is, okay, we're not selling as much, so maybe we should just change the packaging, you know, or, you know, so that can be a challenge as well, as maybe seeing, well, maybe it's this area that's actually needing some help, and then we can work on the packaging and updating and refreshing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think that's really true when people want to do a rebrand, especially, is if you don't know who you're sort of rebranding to, then there's no point in going to all of that. You have to know, you know, where you're coming from and what you're going to in order to make that work. It's not just about making it pretty.
Yes, exactly. So like the strategy behind it as well. So we're kind of, it's an interesting field, isn't it? But I think that's why we love it, right? There is this whole other aspect of it too.
Yeah. So when a client wants to like work with you on your branding and they want branded images, what do you normally like explain to them for that? What do you give them, and how do you help them use those later?
Well, it depends on if the client is just coming from imagery or if they've come for me for branding as well. Like, you know, I'm currently working with a project, and I was working with, okay, we started with the logo, we started with, well, I have an outline of questions I asked them and interview them and get an idea of what the brand is. And then I created a branding guide with color schemes and the logo, and then we went on to photography. So that was one aspect of it. Okay, so what is the feel of the photography? What is the kind of tone of it? You know, is it very bright and airy? You know, very colorful? Is it more somber and maybe more black and white? And so this specific client, it was more, it's more thinking contemplative, black and white, you know, very high contrast imagery, maybe imagery of people, but also of like nature, and so those kind of things. So, but if you come, some clients just come and they say, okay, I need a whole like visual package. So that's like the bigger thing, right? So maybe they're about to launch their website and they need imagery for all their website and social media and things like that. And so I will work with them and create a package for them specifically. I had another client that I did this for. She was doing like a coaching business, but she kind of, the feel of it was more of a Zen kind of, you know, so I created a lot of imagery for her that was nature and leaves and stones, and so things that she could use as, you know, backgrounds and like for buttons and things like that. So that was something that I would definitely do with somebody. Another thing, if you maybe came from me for just, okay, I have a bunch of blog posts and I would want you to, you know, create some imagery for me, then I would do that as well. And so I'm in the process of creating, we can send you a link for that too, but I'm in the process of creating more of like a stock photography kind of service where the lower end package would be just like once a month you get some stock photography that you needed. But then the next level would be, okay, I need female business and XYZ, and then the highest tier would be that very catered packaging for you. Like, I need this specifically. So
I think that's really neat because a lot of the stock photography sites out there, you see those images over and over and over again. Because like even one that I came across and I was like, this is really neat. I actually saw it on somebody else's site recently, and that's where it's nice to have something either that not everybody else has access to or that's really specific to your business and customized, because then you're not running into things where people are like, but I saw that somewhere else, or this looks like somebody else's image.
And that goes back to branding, is that like, because I know exactly, there's this specific like stock photography, non-stock traditional stock photography website, and I too was like, oh, this is cool, I really understand what they're doing. Then I realized, oh, but they're kind of replacing, because you know the traditional stock photography, it's like, here's my product, and, you know, and it's usually like some male in a white blue shirt and tie, and then like, you know, and usually there's not a lot of female or diversity as well. Like somebody else said that, like I was asking some people and they're like, yeah, there's not a lot of diversity. Like there's not imagery. It's usually white female, male, or, you know. And so, and then the other thing was like, well, my brand is like, I want color specific. Like I want orange. I want to be able to say like, I want imagery that's orange. Or somebody sends you all their like office supplies or stuff like that, and like, you know, you create like little graphics of like specific things for there. I mean, if you're local, I'd probably even just go to your office and take pictures of your space and of you and your profile, and, you know, getting all that imagery. Because I noticed that too when I was building my site. I was like, oh, I can totally do this myself, but if I was starting out, I didn't have all this, you know. And I definitely think that's specific to branding, is that you're you, right? So if you start seeing the same imagery everywhere, which I've seen a certain picture everywhere recently, because they start, which is the problem, they start trending.
Yep.
And then it's everywhere. So yeah.
Yeah, and you really stand out if you have like a certain thing. Like Melissa at the Nectar Collective has those really bright colors, and when you see her stuff, you know that it's hers. And so that's really what everybody's wants, is when you see something on Pinterest or on Facebook, or somebody just sends you a link and you're not, you know, you don't have maybe the website, you still want to know who that belongs to and be recognizable in that way.
So yeah, I'm in the process of creating that, and so I think I'll give you a link, and then people can like say, hey, I really want you to do this and that, and you can be in the beginning stages. Yeah. But yeah, I think that would be a cool thing.
So do you have any other advice for people who want to sort of do branded images or branding on their website, and maybe can't work with the designer yet, who are just like trying to do that on their own?
Okay. Yeah, I think that there's definitely certain things you can do. If you're kind of a visual person, Pinterest is a good place to start. Maybe start a board. Think of brands that you like. So we did mention Starbucks, or, you know, Apple's another one, but maybe there is a specific kind of feel that you like, and realize, okay, I want a certain kind of imagery, and you can create that imagery. Start maybe, I think most people have a cell phone, and there's some limitations to having a cell phone, but you can use it. Find, you know, lighting is a big thing, so find, you know, a window and set up something on the tabletop and maybe take some pictures. But I'm definitely in the process of working and doing that. And I think if you post this later, I might have that already set up. I'm going to create like a PDF of like, hey, you know, these are some tricks to actually creating some imagery that works and that you can start, you know, putting on your blog. But yeah, doing that. And then of course, if you really do have to find stock photography, find one of the stock sites that have more original content. But I think the best thing is just to create your own content, you know, and then use what you have. So find a window, tabletop, and start putting some objects down. or things like that. I think the challenge is to not, like for example, I'm thinking Instagram, which is very image heavy, as either people make it as very salesy, like, and they add a bunch of like text and everything, and it's just too busy, or they do really bad, dark room, and it's like a really bad picture. And sometimes it works if there's a good story connected to it, but I think that's just something to keep in mind. Is like, okay, have some photography that works. Or maybe you have a friend and you collaborate with them. You say, hey, I'll do this for you if you take some pictures of me, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's good. And the biggest thing is when you're starting out, lighting is huge. Be able to go outside or be near a window, and you don't need to buy a ton of expensive stuff to put in your pictures. Like, I just collected stuff from my house and went to the Dollar Tree and found a couple of things, and then I was able to make stuff starting out that is perfectly nice and is different from what everybody else has.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're thinking about, so the thing that comes to mind is office supplies. And usually you have that stuff in your office already, like Post-it notes, and maybe you find, okay, so your brand is green, so find the objects in your house that is green, or you go outside and you take images of like leaves and things that are green. Or maybe you have a theme of, maybe it's something like you make bake cakes, or your cupcake maker or something like that. Like, you could easily take pictures of ingredients and flour and, just experiment. Like, I think that was the biggest thing in our school class, like 101 photography class, it was just go out there, especially now with digital. It's just like, take a bunch of stuff, get a nice lit place. You can kind of tell, like, usually there's a window in your house that always has really nice lighting, and just put a tabletop down and then start playing around, throw some flour around, or, or something like that, and you photograph your space. I think people really want to see, especially on Instagram, they want to see behind the brand. So see your process, see what you do, like, okay, here I am making cupcakes, and here I'm tasting the batter, or, those kind of things. I think it's really important.
Yeah, that's so true. Don't be afraid to let people see the behind the scenes stuff, because that's what really connects with people. So did you have anything else for branding or anything you wanted to talk about before we go into just a couple last questions?
I mean, there's so much you could say. I mean, we could talk another hour if you really wanted to, but I think we're talking about like so if you're starting out and you can't really pay for somebody, I think that's the biggest thing, is just, okay, have an initial idea of who you're talking, and make it simple. Like, okay, so hey, I'm doing cupcakes, just make it simple. I think but imagery can also be a way to start really doing it in a simple way, like having nice imagery of your stuff. Like, I know somebody on Instagram, and she just posts pictures of her cakes, and writes some funny blurb about it, and like that kind of thing can really just slowly start building your community. I think you can be personal and meet people and start building a community and realizing, okay, this is who I'm targeting. Okay, now I'm at the stage where I need some help. And I think that's something that you can kind of do. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, like, you can just do it on your own, because there is a challenge of, like, you can only go so far, and then you kind of need somebody who's an expert in the field. But
yeah. Okay, so other than that, just business-wise, what advice would you have for somebody who's just starting out building a business?
I think community is a big part. I think it's really important to find your process. So, some people, everybody has, XYZ way of doing their scheduling. I am not. Some people are like list makers, and they love the list making, and like, that's my sister totally. Like, I'm doing lists and checking everything off. Like, if that's you, do that. I'm super visual. I need something like, if it's not in front of me, I'll forget it. I have a big, way of doing things. I also come from working at an office where we had to put in our time. So I have a certain way of putting in my time. And there's apps for that too. Toggle is one of the things that I use. It's putting in my time, setting in, okay, this is what I'm doing. Because that's a big thing, time. It's definitely time. It's like realizing what you're doing with your time. And, okay, I thought I was spending this much time, but really half the time I was on Facebook or doing something else, So, or in Pinterest or something else. So that's the big thing. So finding your community, setting up a work process, and creating a routine of some kind. It might be a little hard to be like really specific routine when you're an entrepreneur, because just the way you might be doing. But one way is doing that is to set up your days where you have specific tasks that day, and the next day you maybe work on something else, or that, okay, today I'm having meetings all day, or today I'm doing the branding all day, or that kind of thing. And then also be flexible and not, you can't have everything at once. I think that's the other challenge. It's like, okay, I'm not going to be here right away, but it's a process of building my brand.
Yeah. I know for me, like I start out my morning and I do the same thing. So I get up, I get ready, I exercise, I schedule my social media, and then I go into whatever I have planned for the day. And if it's, writing a blog post, then I might do that for the whole day and write a couple of them. And then the next day I might just do client work. And so you have to figure out what's going to work for you and what's going to work with the people you're working with.
I've found that for me is blocks. I do time blocks where I definitely start my day with, most days anyways, I start my days with exercise. I found that you're sitting at home a lot, and then I found that was just horrible. So definitely like working out first thing in the morning gets my oxygen flowing. I'm more creative, and then I have blocks of time of 90 minutes. So I have 90-minute block, then I have 30-minute. And I think the big thing is not checking the email first thing in the morning too, for me anyways. It's like you tend to check your email and then you start getting all like boggled up. But I usually have a first block of time where I do things, and then I check my email like at that 30-minute mark. I even schedule, like, it's basically scheduling time to just make your, mind wander, or take a walk, or, go on Facebook or go on Pinterest or do whatever for that 30 minutes. It could be cleaning up your desk or whatever. And then you get another 90-minute block. And so you're doing intense work of time. And that's kind of what I've started to do. And I really like that. And then I'm like, cutoff time. I'm not working yet, even though sometimes it happens, I might work in the evening because I have some Skype calls scheduled or whatever. But when I've done that, I've been really like consistent in but that's for me personally. I don't know, like some people, this has to be more flexible, but.
Yeah, the email thing is huge. I actually turned off the notifications on my phone so it doesn't buzz every time I get an email. And that has been so nice that I just check it when I have time to check it, or when I've scheduled time to sit and do my email, and I don't have to worry about, because anybody who sends you an email can wait 12 hours, 24 hours to get a response.
Yes. I think that's a huge thing too, is like definitely email can kind of distract you right away. That's one of the things for me. I definitely found that. So, and scheduling that block to, like, it's similar to when you were at school. You had, 10-minute break between your classes, or, it's just to refresh your mind, get up, you could walk or do something. And the midday, I definitely do something midday where I'm like, okay, I have a block of time to like go eat lunch or go outside, or it just breaks up your day and refreshes your mind. And I think there is even research done on it that people that do take a lunch break actually do better than working through your lunch, just because you refresh your mind and you be more focused when you come back. I found that I already realized that when I was working at my old job, because it was one of those 10-hour day places where it's like, I should get out of my desk, away from my desk for a minute, take a walk.
Yeah.
Like
yeah, I did the same thing, because there were days when I'd have to stay and I'd work through lunch, and I always regretted it at the end of the day, because I was like, did I really accomplish that much more stuff working on my lunch break, or did I just make myself miserable?
You probably did, and you're just tired.
Yeah.
You're not into it yet.
Yeah. So what are your goals for the next 6 months?
What are my goals? I have a few projects in mind, so I'm kind of wanting to get those done. Of course, I also want to grow my community. I think that that's something that I want to focus on. Instead of saying like, I want more clients, I think I want to just focus on creating a community, creating content that is valuable to that community of people. And I think with that, focusing on that and what I can give, I think will lead to more clients. I think that's just in itself. Instead of being like, I just want to find clients. I think that's another challenge too, right? Where you try to like, I'm gonna go, advertise and market. But I think a big thing is just realizing that you can kind of just target a certain niche and just, okay, building a community of people. That's definitely something. And yeah, I have certain ideas of where I want my business to go. I have certain landmarks that I hit.
Yeah, I think the community is huge because that's where you're going to find your best clients anyways, if they're already engaged with what you're putting out there. And I know that, like, for me, sometimes I will have somebody interested and then they're not so sure, but once they get to sign up for my newsletter and get an email from me and they see that everything's so consistent and everything is helping them, then they're more willing to say, okay, yeah, I do want to work with you, invest, because I already know who you are.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best clients I've gotten are those that are like, okay, they know me, or they referred by a friend, or like, I saw your pictures online, I loved them, could you, do them as well? Because they feel like there's a personal connection, right? And so I think that's why it's important with branding too, is that it's personal to your brand, because you want to attract those people that are the right kind of clients. So if you're starting to do that, starting out, and you're just not you, and whatever you write and whatever imagery you put up, you're going to attract a certain kind of client that's not you, right? And so I think that's another thing that you have to keep in mind, that you can't target everybody. Like, that's the as a designer, usually they're like, what's your target market? And they're like, everybody from 0 to 52, like female and male. And I'm like, that's not your target market.
Yep.
That's everybody.
You cannot cater to everybody.
Not gonna happen.
Yeah. And even if you do, you're going to get those 52-year-old men, and you're going to be like, I don't even know how to work with you.
Yeah. It's funny to see too, like when we're in Bliss Boost, we can see who comes to Bliss Boost. There are mainly females in the group, but there are a few males. And it's just interesting to see like who she attracts, even if they're still kind of fit within the demographic.
Mm-hmm.
If they're male. It's fun to say that.
Yeah, and I think you noticed that, because I did notice that. She was like, this is who I was targeting. And I was like, I am that person. I totally know why I came here now. And I think when you start attracting people, you're going to notice trends in who those types of people are. And you can figure out your target audience that way.
Yep, totally. Like, okay, like the people that like, you want those clients, right? They're like, I love the work you're doing. I love it. I just need to work with you. Like, I love, you have that too, probably. Like, hey, I just love this person. I wish I could work with them, And there is something that you're drawn to, and I think there is something to that. And if you have created a brand that's not like that, then you're not going to get that kind of client.
Yeah. Okay, so last question. What are you working on right now that we can check out and support you with?
Okay. Well, I think the next thing that's coming up, which is end of September, so probably it's already been, if this is in October. But Devin and I are going to create this Twitter chat, and then we're going to do this webinar about branding. But I think that something that whoever's watching this right now, if you are interested, you can sign up for email list, and I'll tell you when I'm starting my stock photography, and if I'm going to start my starting out photography DIY kind of thing. I'll definitely do that too. So by the time this is up, I think that stuff will be up for you guys.
All right, awesome.
Well, or just email me and say, hey, I want to work together.
Yes, yes. we love getting those emails.
That's the thing. We're small, so just contact you. Say, hey, I am building my website and I need some imagery. Can you help me? I'm looking for this.
Yeah. All right. Well, it was great talking with you. I was so glad to get like another designer and get to see what you do and your opinions on things, and sort of be able to chat about what we do as designers.